One, the Mark Zuckerberg of Russia, arrested in France. Start the clock and start the countdown until they go after Elon Musk. Two, the divide between young women and young men. That was the discussion yesterday here on the Will Cain Show. Today, the second biggest divide in politics, the divide between black men and black women. Conversation with Kathy Barnette. And three, it's almost a certainty now. The U.S. will fall into a recession. A conversation with economist St Onge. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, always on demand. Just hit subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. You can subscribe on YouTube and watch the Will Cain Show. Yesterday, as I went about my day, working out my young son now with a broken leg, all he's left with is the weight room. Taking my older son to practice in the evening. Texts began to come in. Social media messages started to light up. There seemed to have been some sort of breaking news, maybe a break in an investigation. It seems that our mystery caller yesterday, the mystery voicemail that was simply delivering some information to me about my failures on Fox News in hosting a liberal, might have come from a familiar corner. Internet sleuths dove in. They recognized the voice. They think they know this sound. Listen.
Yes, I don't know who the woman you had on TV tonight was. It's Tuesday. But she took control of your program, and you let her just filibuster.
Now, the guys on the show were some of the first to think they broke the mystery. But they weren't alone. The messages started coming in. Social media and text messages. There is a hunt for the mystery voicemail. And you guys in the militia, both those listening in the control room in New York and you guys listening across the country in the militia, think you understand who this might be. And let us just say, it might come from the highest levels of American government. So, stick around here on the Will Cain Show, and we will break the mystery of the mystery voicemail on the Will Cain Show. But let's get right into it, though, with the arrest of the Mark Zuckerberg of Russia. Story number one. Telegram is a social media app with over 900 million users. It is popular in places where free speech has been suppressed. It's popular in places like Russia. It's popular in places like Iran, India. It's also been popular as a tool to get regular updates outside the world of propaganda in Ukraine. The founder of Telegram is a man named Pavel Durov. He's 39 years old. He's in incredible shape. He seems to be into body hacking. But he also is into privacy. He's into the ability to not have your communications discovered by authoritarians, by governments, by Russia. In fact, Pavel Durov, although Russian and described as the Mark Zuckerberg of Russia, is on the run from Vladimir Putin and Russia. Telegram is, I believe, made Pavel Durov a billionaire several times over. With that money, as opposed to other billionaires, he seems to have acquired strength. He won't turn over the names of accounts, the communications within accounts, even if there's accusations of child pornography, even if there's accusations of ties to ISIS, even if there's accusations of ties to white supremacy. Pavel Durov places privacy and free speech at the top of his value chart, and his billions have only seemed to embolden his devotion to free speech. Yesterday, or earlier this week, when landing at Bourget Airport in Paris, France, Durov was arrested. He He was arrested by the French government, and French President Emmanuel Macron said on X that Durov's arrest was in relationship to an ongoing judicial investigation and in no way a political decision. Durov's arrest has led to people like Elon Musk tweeting out hashtag free Pavel. The French government, like most of the European governments, does not have anything like the United States First Amendment and no cultural devotion to the idea of free speech. The French government, like every European government, thinks that tech companies should bend to the heel of whatever the will of whatever government. Pavel Durov felt differently, and today Pavel Durov finds himself in jail. Why do we talk about a man that not many people have ever heard of on a messaging app that is not as popular as even, say, Signal in the United States or WhatsApp, and certainly not as popular as X or Facebook? Because the same sentiment that leads European governments to arrest a tech billionaire is on the march here in America. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder and CEO of Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook, wrote a letter to the Honorable Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives. Mark Zuckerberg said the following in his letter to Congressman Jim Jordan. He said, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our team for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our team when we did not agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take down content, and we own our decisions, including COVID-19 related changes we made to the enforcement in the wake of this pressure. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. I also think that we made some choices that, with the benefit of hindsight and new information, we wouldn't make today. Like I said to our teams at the time, I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction. And we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. That is Mark Zuckerberg admitting that Facebook gave into pressures directly from the Biden administration to take down content, even humor and satire, that ran afoul of the administration's wishes when it came to COVID-19. This would, of course, I'm sure, include the origins of COVID, whether or not it came from a laboratory or from a Chinese wet market, the efficacy of vaccines, and other very worthy debates in the public in 2021 that ended up creating untruths, falsehoods, and boxing out the truth. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri took Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to task over this exact issue. And Mayorkas, had many people look back on this now, with this letter from Mark Zuckerberg, perjured himself in front of Congress. Listen.
We have example after example of this administration coordinated, apparently, according to a federal court, by your agency, pressuring, coercing social media companies to engage in censorship. Is that constitutional?
That is unequivocally false.
Is what the emails show.
It is unequivocally false, Senator.
You are not pressuring the big tech companies to take down accounts. You are not meeting with them to ask them to censor on your behalf.
That is correct. We are not.
That is a lie. That is perjury. That's worthy of more than impeachment. That's worthy of being charged. And this entire exercise, whether or not Mark Zuckerberg has seen the light and decided to be honorable, or he's face-to-face with what Patrick Bet-David of the Patrick Bet-David Show says is an inevitable whistleblower, Mark Zuckerberg has decided to suddenly to tell the truth. And with that, he has put himself, like Elon Musk, directly within the crosshairs of the Biden administration and perhaps a future Harris-Walz administration, who sees these platforms as a threat to their control over the public mindset. People died because they did not know whether or not to wear a mask, whether or not to take a vaccine. No accountability has been accomplished because no one has been able to truthfully have a conversation about whether or not China created COVID in a laboratory. to this very exact moment, to this moment right now, the conversation that we're having on Facebook and on YouTube, I do not know if our content will be suppressed, if our algorithm will be diminished, if the knob will be turned down. Mark Zuckerberg can say that they made mistakes in 2021. Have they corrected their mistakes in 2024? Has the government pressure been alleviated? The government cannot force censorship through third parties, and Zuckerberg is admitting they did. And as such, Musk and Zuckerberg put themselves in the same category as Pavel Durov. And you say, well, that's what happens to a man, the tech billionaire CEO of Telegram in Europe, not in America where we have the First Amendment. But this mindset exists in America. Here's a reminder of the debate I had last week on Fox News with Democratic strategist Nomeki Konst about the First Amendment.
If this were a journalistic platform, which it is not, it is a private corporation at the behest of Elon Musk. Even if so,
you keep saying that. You keep saying this thing about private corporations.
Well, yes, any
versus
lawyer
a
will tell you that.
platform.
There's a difference.
Well,
Yes, it's a private corporation.
I can tell you, Nomiki,
Well,
as an attorney, the
you should
Constitution
know.
provides no extra free speech rights to something deemed a journalistic organization versus a private corporation. There are not tiers to the free speech to the First Amendment of the United States. There are not tiers to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Now, that conversation did provoke Mary to give me a call and say this about my behavior on Fox News.
Instead of cutting her off when she needed to be cut off, you need to maintain better control. Sorry to pass out the information. I'm a little bit unhappy with the way, Republicans are.
Sorry to pass on the information, but I need to have better control of the program. That wasn't a sufficient rebuttal for Mary. Who is Mary? More on that coming up here in a moment here on the Will Cain Show. But the point is that mindset exists. It exists on the left, but it also exists within the halls of American government. That X and Facebook aren't journalistic organizations. And journalistic organizations, they are the ones that should have the protection of the First Amendment. Not you, not me, and not the platform that gives voice to you or to me. So before you look at the story of Pavel Durov and Telegram and his arrest in France and think it doesn't apply to me in America, think back again about the words of Alejandro Mayorkas. Think back again about the words of Nomeki Konst. And listen one more time to this paragraph from Mark Zuckerberg in his letter to Congress, wherein he says, in a separate situation, the FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on corruption allegations involving then Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it while waiting for reply. It's since been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation. In retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. We changed our policies and processes to make sure this doesn't happen again. For instance, we no longer temporarily demote things in the U.S. while waiting for fact checkers. Mark Zuckerberg admitting to the election interference that Facebook played in the 2020 election, admitting to lies they told you about COVID. And soon, if we're not careful, they'll be arresting people like Elon Musk who promise us access to the truth. Truth is one of the biggest divides in our political landscape is between black men and black women. So how will they vote in 2024? We'll have that conversation with senior advisor to Vivek Ramaswamy, Kathy Barnette, coming up on the Will Cain Show. At the Tunnel to Towers, countless veterans' villages stand as a beacon of hope for those who've sacrificed everything. These facilities are committed to helping veterans achieve stability and independence by providing housing and services based on their individual needs. Now, within the village, residents will find support and community among those who truly understand the meaning of service. With several veterans' villages either completed or in development nationwide, the foundation and its supporters believe that the power of unity is what works for veterans and that no veteran should be left behind. Through its homeless veterans program, Veterans Villages, and National Case Management Network, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has provided housing and supportive services to over 8,000 veterans since the program's inception. Join Tunnel to Towers in their goal to eradicate veteran homelessness and support those who've given everything to our country by donating $11 a month to T2T.org. 95 cents of every dollar donated goes directly to helping America's heroes. That's T2T.org. Donate now. The Black Vote, coming up on The Will Cain Show.
The world of business moves fast. Stay on top of it with the Fox Business Rundown every Monday and Friday. Fox Business reporters, anchors, and hosts will bring you beneath the stock market speculation and boardroom drama to tell you about the biggest business stories of today. Whether you're on Main Street or Wall Street, Fox Business is invested in you.
Listen to the Fox Business Rundown every Monday and Friday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
What a way to start the college football season on Fox.
North Carolina.
What a catch. Wow.
Minnesota.
Smash Mouth football.
The season kicks off in prime time, Thursday at 7:30 Eastern on Fox.
Start Saturday strong with America's #1 game. Penn State take on West Virginia.
Watch out.
The best pregame, the best announcers, the biggest games. Big noon Saturday at noon Eastern on Fox.
I'm Charles Payne. Listen to my Unstoppable Prosperity podcast so I can get you making money right now. Whether stocks are hitting new all-time highs or in free fall mode, opportunities abound. So why are so many potential investors still sitting on the sidelines? In a new season of my podcast, I'm going to get you in the game. After 38 years on Wall Street, I'm ready to impart some lessons and get you invested in the greatest wealth-generating machine in history. Listen anytime, everywhere at foxbusinesspodcast.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
The divide between young men and young women seems to be one of the biggest divides in American politics. But if you're looking for a second biggest division, how about the divide between black women and black men? That's coming up on The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com on the Fox News YouTube channel, where the comment section is absolutely exploding. Sleuths in on the mystery. And you folks might be on the right track as to our mystery caller from the highest levels of American government. Mike Holsey says, Will, man, the more I watch your show, the more I find myself rocking out to your intro music. Love that piece. And I started to pull out my guitar every time it comes on. Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I'll tell you what else is awesome. Kathy Barnette, the host of the Kathy Barnette Show. She's a senior advisor and former national grassroots director for Vivek Ramaswamy. Kathy, great to have you on the Will Cain Show.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here with you.
So, Kathy, I think there's a fascinating divide, as we have hinted at, bringing you into this conversation today. Yesterday, I discussed the massive divide simply in the youth demographic, 18 to 29, between women and men, where young women index plus 40 for Kamala Harris. Young men index plus 10 for Donald Trump. That's a 50-point margin between young women and young men. The only other demographic that seems to be showing this type of huge division is the growing difference between black women and black men. What's going on in the black community? What's going on between black women and black men?
Yeah, it's the same thing that's been going on for quite some time, probably over 60 years now, coming right out of LBJ's Great Society idea. And we've been seeing that divide only increase as the decades pass. And I saw it very prominently when I ran in 2022 against Dr. Oz here in Pennsylvania, because although I was in a Republican primary election, every time I would go into the community, I made a point to go specifically into the black community, kind of preparing what I was going to do in the general election. And what I saw, I would go in, have my team, bring in as many black people as you can. And the room was always filled with black men. And every single time before I left, I spent 30 minutes talking, and the next 30 minutes was me changing almost every single voter registration from Democrat in that room to Republican. And so I saw it then. And then when I started working on the Vivek Ramaswamy presidential campaign, we started traveling across the nation. And it was the exact same telltale sign. Black men are finally sick and tired of being sick and tired. Every single metric that measures anything positive in this country, Black people are not only at the bottom of that list, but Black men are even further at the bottom of that list when they break it out among genders. And Black men specifically are absolutely tired of being at the bottom of every single list, the butt of every joke, and things are not getting better.
Okay, I want to get into why, Kathy, but I want to back us into why, because I want to follow up on a couple of words you used in that answer. You said to me, Black men finally seeing the light, and that suggests that something has broken recently. But you also said it's a trend that's been building over the last 60 years.
Yeah.
Now, why I'm pushing on you here and to try to reconcile 60 years versus finally is what I want to figure out before I get to the why is this something that has changed within the community of Black men about the way they see the world, or is it unique to Donald Trump? I didn't see this type of movement, Kathy, for example, with Mitt Romney. It seems to have been with the rise of Donald Trump.
It's both. I think the answer is both, Will, right? I mean, because, you know, again, Donald Trump did me no favors in my 2022 election. And yet, at the exact same time, he is the best president I've ever lived under. And I've never seen a Republican, honestly, earnestly, with great authenticity. I can't even say the word. Say it for me. Authenticity. I can't even say the word right now. But I've never seen a Republican.
By the way, it's authentic. It's authentic for you to own your trouble with authenticity. It is authenticity.
I couldn't get it out. Authenticity. I couldn't get the tongue right. But I've never seen a Republican have so much authenticity and going out to the Black community and not bringing backpacks and you know, I don't know, Jay-Z or Beyonce to gyrate in front of them, but to come with real plans, real ideas. Let me show you what I have done for the Black community. Let me show you what we could do in the Black community. And it was so authentic that, I mean, the first time I saw Donald Trump, I think it was in Akron, Ohio. It was a sea of white people, red caps everywhere. And this is during the primary for 2016. And he said to the Black community, what in the hell do you have to lose? I've never heard a Republican be so direct and honest. And it came across sincere and not plastic. That is the overwhelming problem within the Republican Party. And I'm a Republican and I will never vote Democrat again. And yes, and yet I see that the plastic nature, or it's not very authentic, and Republicans saying, okay, well, this year we're finally going to make a move into the Black community. One, Donald Trump actually made a move in the Black community. But as we look at over 60 years, right, 60 years, and my question to the Black community has always been, I mean, I think it's a legitimate question. What have we benefited from being so loyal to the Democrat Party? No group of people are more loyal to the Democrat Party, voting 95 to 97% Democrat, than the Black community. And after 60 years, you have to ask yourself, because we know Democrats cannot win the White House without 95%, at least 95% of the Black vote. So we know what they get out of this equation, but what exactly are Black people getting? And I believe Black men specifically are beginning to ask that question, because when you look around, our neighborhoods are some of the most dilapidated neighborhoods. You're ducking and dodging bullets, horrible education among Black students, liquor stores on every single street corner. And I believe Black men specifically who have to live in this environment, who are sick and tired of being denigrated for having too much testosterone, not having enough testosterone, a system within the policies that Democrats tend to support, that actually keeps them out of the House.
Well, let me go into the why now. And you've touched on the why, but I want to dig a little deeper. So if I were guessing as to the why when it comes to Black men, I would say one of three reasons, or a combination of three reasons. One, policy, as you point out, opportunity zones that Donald Trump has pushed, funding even for HBCUs. addressing real opportunity for Black Americans to build up Black communities. Two, you kind of hinted at it when you talked about testosterone. I do think masculinity plays a big role. I think masculinity is important to Black men. I think Donald Trump embodies a type of masculinity that appeals to many men, but in particular Black men. And the Democratic Party has basically vilified the idea of masculinity. And in fact, they're praising today some new form of masculinity represented by Doug Emhoff and Tim Walz. But I want to dig in on authenticity. So it's true. So, Donald Trump's the same guy no matter which crowd he goes into. It's usually a dark navy suit, white shirt, black shiny dress shoes, and a red tie in every situation. It doesn't matter if he's talking to Silicon Valley tech billionaires or a Black neighborhood in the Bronx. Same guy. He doesn't feign an accent, Kathy, as almost every Democratic politician does. Almost. Kamala changes her accent. Hillary changed her accent. Joe Biden changed his accent. And so what I'm getting at when it comes to authenticity, Kathy, I've grown up, I'm not, you always want to be humble about not overstating your own resume, but I've grown up around the Black community. I grew up in a small town in Texas. We were integrated because we all went to the same school. My children went to middle school in Harlem, 135th Street in New York. I've been around the Black community enough to know this. There's a great sensitivity to what one would call the okie doke. This feeling that you're always having something pulled over on you. Either it's a system or an individual. It is a little bit of a cultural sensibility. Obviously not for everybody, but within the Black community. Not to be fooled, not to let somebody pull one over on you. But it doesn't apply to politics, Kathy, to your point. Why have they allowed these politicians to come in and pull the okie doke and allow Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden to give them that fake accent and just pull one over on the community to the tune of 90% voting block for over half a century?
Yeah. This is a hard one, right? And I mean, it's not a hard one for me to point out, but it's a hard one to state. And I write about it in my book, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, Being Black and Conservative in America. And here's the reality. And I say this with great sensitivity, is that, not all overseers on slave plantations were white. They had Black overseers as well. They were called drivers, and their job was to do the exact same thing that the white overseer did, right? And probably they were according to many history books that I've read, they were actually a little bit more horrifying. But their job was the exact same, to keep Black folks towing the line. Shut up, sit down. Nobody cares about your opinion. Do as you're told. And now today, although we're, 160 plus years past the abolition of slavery, we still have those same drivers within the Black community today. I never forget turning on the television to TV One, which is a predominantly Black television station. And this is during Obama's second term, during the general election. And Michelle Obama was on, and she said to a predominantly Black audience, it does not matter who is on that ballot. You just go vote Democrat. It doesn't matter what they've done. It doesn't matter what they've said. You just go vote Democrat. And then towards the end of that interview, her and the host started joking about, once you vote, then you can go get some chicken and some watermelon. Yeah. And, and it's the concept that we have these same modern day drivers today, the Beyonce, the Jay-Z's, the Obamas, and I can't remember the name of the media group that Hillary Clinton sat down with in 2016 when she was running for office. And they said, what do you carry in your purse, Hillary? And she pulled out hot sauce, right? And instead of checking her, or remember the Breakfast Club when Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. And then the Black host, who always has so much to say about protecting the Black community, just sat there like a lump on a log and said absolutely nothing, not checking. We've become a culture, the entire culture, but specifically in the Black culture, of normalizing the abnormal. And so we have normalized these politicians coming into our community having done nothing, because you can't find a Republican politician in many of these predominantly Black communities, and yet you drive around and you're holding your breath trying to get out of there. And yet these same politicians come before the Black community time and time again, saying saying what they're going to do, having done absolutely nothing. And my question has always been to the Black community, how many more of your generations, of your children, are you willing to sacrifice to Democrats finally giving you the utopia that they always mouthed out to you in words, but it never comes into fruition? And again, honestly, Black men are just sick and tired. The masculinity is important. The fact that Donald Trump arrives with this air of authenticity is important, but also to your point, the opportunity zones, the program,
Right.
the policy change he was advocating with rapper Ice Cube. The historically Black colleges, but more so, I think it's just people are just sick and tired. The apathy is real. The oppression of it all is real. And I believe most politicians on both sides are forgetting about that.
All right, last question, Kathy. We've talked so much about Black men, but nothing seems to have changed with Black women. You are the true unicorn in this equation, you personally, in that Black women are one of the strongest voting blocs for Democrats in this country. Not just voting blocs, advocates, especially on social media. Some of the best advocates for Democrats seem to be Black women. Why?
Yeah. It's a lot. And you can't just look at right now and say this is the reason why. Again, this is over 60 years of grooming the Black population, specifically Black women, that you don't need a Black man, and that you can do it all on your own with the help of Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam, and this applies to both Black women, white women, doesn't matter. Women tend to be more vulnerable when they are not married and when they have children out of wedlock, and they need that subsidized living. And the Republican Party, the Democrat Party tends to offer those particular promises that we will subsidize your living. They pay your rent, pay your car note, give you a phone, computer, food, clothing, whatever you want. What do you need? What a physical man in the home. And so you have a lot of Black women who are sensitive to that particular aspect. But then again, I think a lot of it has to be they've drank the Kool-Aid of what I mentioned earlier about these Black drivers within the Black community that have the same exact role of the Black drivers on those slave plantation. And that is to keep people towing the line, not giving them the truth, spinning the information. And this isn't just germane to Black people, but white people as well, right? You see a lot of white woke women who are, who have also drank the Kool-Aid that a man can be a woman, and that they should rise up and protect this new class of women. And so you see this kind of manipulation of the narrative on both sides.
Well, I'll just leave it at this as well, Kathy. Like, if we are attempting to fully understand, I think, way this voting bloc has devoted itself to Democrats over half a century, we would be incomplete if we didn't mention that you're capable of finding examples of racism on the right, overt examples of racism that seem to validate what Democrats are selling or validate priors held by a lot of people in the Black community. And if they see the right as racist, then it's not a home for the Black community. What I would say to that is you're going to be able to find examples of racism within any political ideology, within any community. The question is whether or not it defines that community. And I will just tell you, having been around communities who are organized by the left, that racism is there. It's just a different kind of racism.
Absolutely.
I'll never send my kids to school in that neighborhood. I'll do everything possible, including, headed to private school to ensure that my kids are never exposed to another element. Or I don't travel north of 110th Street. Whatever that lifestyle choice is, it's just a different form of racism.
Yeah, listen, racism exists, right? And we're never going to get rid of racism because we're people, and people have their own hearts and their own minds, and it can be as immovable. I grew up in the very deep South. Racism there is very different from the racism I come across up here in the North, outside of Philadelphia. It feels more like classism up here. They just don't want you around. Whereas in the Deep South, that racism is real. It's enough to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. So it's just a difference. And what I've decided in my life growing up extremely extremely impoverished, underneath a rock, in a home on a pig farm, in a home with no insulation, no running water, outhouse in the back, well on the side. When I say poor, I grew up ridiculously poor. And what I've done is, because our nation creates certain rules that if you keep your nose clean, you get an education, you wait to have children when you're married in that environment, that you can actually build a life for yourself. It's not rocket science what I did to create a life for myself that was very different than the one I was born into. And yet we have a lot of people, the fall of meritocracy in our world. They're glorifying the rapper's name, who's very obese. Her name just flew out.
Lizzo.
Lizzo. Thank you.
But I think she's on a weight loss. She's losing weight, I think, as we speak. I saw something last night.
It was glorifying all of that, right? I mean, like, we just live in a culture that is so demoralized and glorifying all the wrong values and all the wrong culprits. But racism exists everywhere. My constant thought is, just get out of my way. The last thing I want is another white person helping me to do anything. Generally, when that happens, we're not helped looking at the Great Society. So that's all we need.
Yeah.
Some personal responsibility.
It's an awesome conversation. You get more of that stuff on the Kathy Barnette Show, by the way. Check that out. She ran, as she mentioned, for Senate in Pennsylvania. She was a former national grassroots director for Vivek Ramaswamy. Awesome conversation. Kathy, thank you so much for being on the Will Cain Show.
Thank you, Will.
All right, again, go check her out, the Kathy Barnette Show, on X at Kathy for Truth. Okay, let's see if we can break the mystery really quickly. Willisha, you watching, fellas in New York, you've been on the case. Who was our mystery caller who's very upset about my appearance? As a reminder, okay, I want you to listen to this voice. This is the mystery voicemail I got. We think there's been some cracks in the case. Here is Exhibit A.
Not taking control of things, but having women on like that who are obviously liberals, it serves no purpose. Just don't even give them a platform.
Okay. Now, let me bring in the fellas in New York. Willisha, you guys were some of the first on the case. Now, I have to admit, the listeners were as well. The comments, the social media posts, and even right now, the YouTube chat, I think, is on the case. You guys have sent me, I don't want to read yet what they're saying, but I feel like they're there. So let's go ahead and play, if you will, two-a-days. Exhibit B, and I believe Exhibit B is the most popular suggestion in our comment section. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. Yep. And a lot of people, even right now, are saying it.
This is the name in the comment section. You judge now Exhibit B.
Senator Schatz actually gave us the answer, and I'm quoting him. "We are tired of being on defense about this." End quote.
Okay, stop. It is Senator, clip, Exhibit B, is Senator Marshall Blackburn from Tennessee. Okay, so the question is Exhibit A, Exhibit B? I want you to give me both back to back. Okay, Dan, give me good 5 seconds, 6 seconds each back to back, please.
All right, here's the voicemail.
Yes, I don't know who the woman you had on TV tonight was. It's Tuesday.
And here's Blackburn.
Senator Schatz actually gave us the answer, and I'm quoting him. "We are tired of being on defense about this."
Okay. Now, one of the things you guys point out is, how does this person have your phone number, Will? I was like, I don't know. But you did point out Blackburn could get my phone number. Mm-hmm. She could get it. Probably from the NSA, but also just from my co-host at Fox and Friends. It's a dead ringer really vocally for Senator Blackburn.
People
Go
were
ahead,
throwing,
James.
My big question is, when we reverse searched the number,
Whoa. James. This is when I have to regret giving you the microphone. Okay?
I mispronounced the name, so it's not her.
I did a reverse search on the phone number, and this person is from California.
I'll bleep it out
The
after.
name is not important.
I'll bleep it out after.
I want to call you all kinds of names right now. Appropriate names for
Dummy.
what you are. I do not think, just mute him now. I don't, the thing about trust is you can burn it up easily. It's very hard to earn, and you can burn it up easily. His trust meter is now back down to 0.
Wow.
I based upon my internet research, 2-a-days, tinfoil, I don't think it's Senator Blackburn.
I don't either. And I played it for a producer here at Fox, and who knows Senator Blackburn very well, and she didn't think it was her voice exactly. But you never know. She could have used some staffer's phone or something like that. You never know. I don't know.
James Wagner on YouTube. Sounds like, he says, Congresswoman Blackburn. He demoted her. She's a senator. The Great Gatsby says, Marsha. Jeppy Anderson says, Marsha Blackburn, 100%. David Pierre says, sounds like Marsha Blackburn. You guys are all over it. It does sound like Senator Marsha Blackburn. That was before we played the clip. So, unless she ghosted, she figured out how to ghost account somebody from Long Beach, California, I don't think it's Senator Blackburn. Even 2-a-days, if it sounds so similar, let's hear Exhibit A and Exhibit B one more time.
Okay, here's the voicemail.
Yes, I don't know who the woman you had on TV tonight was. It's Tuesday.
And Blackburn.
Senator Schatz actually gave us the answer.
It's too good.
And I'm quoting him.
All right. The only real determination from this segment is that James is in the penalty box for more than 2 minutes.
Yep.
Don't know how long.
That's a
but
major
he will
penalty.
Remain in the penalty. That was a major penalty. All right. We seem to be certainly headed for a recession. That's what a lot of experts say. Let's run it by our economic expert, Peter St Onge, next on The Will Cain Show.
It's time to take the quiz. 5 questions, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
History, pop culture, science, sports, civics. How much do you know? Let's find out.
Who was the first person to walk on the moon?
Jackson or something?
Neil Armstrong.
Take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox and then listen to the quiz podcast to find out how you did.
Play, share, and of course, listen to the quiz right now at thequiz.fox.
What a way to start the college football season on Fox.
North Carolina.
What a catch. Wow.
Minnesota.
Smash Mouth football.
The season kicks off in prime time, Thursday at 7:30 Eastern on Fox.
Start Saturday strong with America's #1 game. Penn State take on West Virginia.
Watch out.
The best pregame, the best announcers, the biggest games. Big noon Saturday at noon Eastern on Fox.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts commercial-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Dana Perino, Kennedy, Ben Domenech, The Duffys, and many more. Subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day. Featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
It's becoming increasingly predicted the United States is headed for a recession. Let's run that by our expert, Professor Peter St Onge, here on The Will Cain Show. Streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple or Spotify. You can always hang out with us here on The Will Cain Show or join us every day on Facebook or on YouTube. He is the host of Peter St Onge, PhD podcast. He's a visiting fellow at the Heritage Institute. And he is an economist. And he's back. He's back here on The Will Cain Show. What's up, Professor?
Hey, it's great to see you again, Will. It has been too long.
It has. And you're doing great. You are growing your, not just your professorial career, but you're growing your media present, so I'm honored to have you back again. I keep reading, we're headed for recession. It's clear we're headed for a recession. First of all, your prediction. When? Well, first, if. Second, when?
So the recession timing is funny. The last time that we had a regular recession in the 2008 crisis, they did not announce it until 12 months after it already began, right? So the recession hit after the fact. They told us it started in December of 2007. Okay, they didn't announce it until December of 2008. The stock market is what a lot of people use to determine whether it's a recession. Well, the stock market had kept going up until around June of 2008. In fact, it was doing fantastic early in 2008. And then, of course, it hit Lehman, and then everything collapsed, and we had the 2008 crisis, which lasted roughly 5 to 8 years, depending how you time it. But so the problem is that we don't, like, when the recession starts, you don't necessarily see it in real time. You don't necessarily see it in stock prices. You don't necessarily see it in economic numbers. It's only after the fact you can really spot it. So having said that, there is a big debate whether we're already in recession right now, whether it might have started last October, might have started more like March. If not, that we're pretty close to it. And, you know, the mainstream media wants to keep pumping out this soft landing narrative. Somebody did a hilarious analysis. They did a search for the phrase soft landing, and you can go back on Google and find when it appears in the media. Every single recession, we get this huge flurry of articles about the soft landing that's coming, and then every time we dip into recession. The Fed has never pulled off a soft landing in 110 years. I would be shocked with Jerome Powell if they pull it off this time.
Well, okay. So certainly with the job number revision, the scandalous and perhaps corrupt job number revision in the last 2 weeks, where we have been revised down roughly 120,000 jobs, fewer than what we were told were added to the economy. With the job number revisions, it seems to give evidence to what you're talking about, that we're already in that recession. I believe, I'm going to spit out numbers, let's say that I'm close, if not exact. Unemployment, that pushes unemployment now north of 4%.
Yep.
And I think it increases the likelihood, Professor. In fact, I think Jerome Powell's already suggested it's going to happen, that in the next week or two, the Fed will cut interest rates for the first time. So that means that we have reached an interest rate peak, and then we were going to start coming down on interest rates. I saw this viral chart. I've had some of my buddies in finance talk to me about this, and every time you've ever said that I said something smart, it's usually me regurgitating one of my buddies who runs a value hedge fund. But he told me about this chart. He said, every recession has been preceded by a Fed rate cut from its peak. Now, that's possibly because, as you mentioned a moment ago, recessions are trailing. They actually begin before we officially acknowledge them. But the point is, if we cut rates in September, that's somewhat of an acknowledgement of high interest rate peak, right? Almost invariably after that, we start seeing an undeniable recession.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So if you kind of zoom out, the process is that the Fed begins the sort of boom bust cycle by making rates really cheap. They make money super cheap. You get this kind of tissue fire economy where everything's growing, everybody's getting loans. All those loans lead to inflation. At that point, the Fed panics. They jack up rates to try to choke off the inflation. The high rates then cause the recession. So the Fed creates the inflation, and then it creates the recession. And your friend is absolutely right that because that's the process, every single recession begins, really it begins when you ramp up the rates. But once the economic numbers that the Fed sees starts turning south, that's when the Fed panics. They say, uh-oh, we did it again. They start slashing rates. And so when you see it sort of printed out on the recession, every recession is preceded by the Fed realizing they screwed up and slashing rates. And that's exactly what we're looking at. So starting in the next September meeting, we're looking at markets predict about 1 full point of rate cuts in the next 2 or 3 meetings. That is a very, very fast pace. That's essentially panic cutting. That very clearly signals that the Fed thinks they screwed up. They pushed us over into the recession, and now they're going to try to slash rates to at least take the pain out of the recession.
And that would suggest, no one can time a market. That's the folly we all make. But it would seem to suggest a recession in late 2024. Now, what does late mean? I don't know, but I would have to think it would mean after an election. Now, I said that to Stuart Varney at Fox Business. He goes, well, if you believe that the Fed is politicized, then it would be after, right? But the point is, I would be very surprised if they let an undeniable recession take place before November.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to try to move heaven and earth to postpone the recession, to at least postpone the feeling of a recession until after the election. So they can keep pumping out money.
Right.
They can release money from the strategic oil reserve to try to keep prices down. They're going to do everything they can to postpone the pain until after November. And that's not just the administration. I think that's also all the bureaucrats, right? So the guys who determine whether it's a recession, you are playing Russian roulette with your career if you come out with that kind of a call right before the election. You are putting your agency at risk, your budget, your career. So I think absolutely everybody's playing ball until the election.
I want to talk about inflation for a moment. You know, I think people understand this. I think they do, Professor, but, you know, basically inflation is taxes, right? They're one and the same. I don't know how people, it takes a little bit of mental gymnastics not to get it, but not much mental gymnastics to get it. Like if your dollar is worth less, you have been taxed more, right? It's like taking another percentage out of your pay cut. Do you think, what is debt to GDP right now? 120%, something like that? 123%? Am I in the right range?
Right. Yeah, about 35 on 29. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think after World War II was our previous peak, right? Before our current modern debt run up, which at that time, I think it got to like 110% of GDP during World War II.
I think it was right around
again, some of my friends
that were matching that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it came down, and it came down through the early 1970s down to something like 23%. I was talking to some of these friends of mine, they were saying, one thing people don't appreciate about that is the role that inflation played. That just like inflation is a tax, you can inflate away your debt. And that we maintained something like, it wasn't a constant, but I think it might have been an average 4% inflation rate, which is higher than what you and I grew up. We grew up with 2%, right? But they had maybe an average of 4. I mean, it was peaks and valleys. But they inflated away a lot of that debt. A, what do you think of that? And B, we've now had a good year or two of heavy inflation. Is that something that we're in the process of doing right now, reducing our debt to GDP by inflating away our debt?
Yeah, that's a big topic when people talk about sort of the fiscal fate of the nation, is that historically countries have two ways to default. You've got a hard default where the country literally says, we're not going to pay our bills. Greece threatened to do that back in 2011. Third world countries do that all the time. But then you've got the soft default. The soft default is where they keep paying their bills, but they let inflation run hot, and so the bills get cheaper and cheaper. So they're effectively, they're defaulting on the national debt, but they're doing it via inflation. So we saw that during COVID, right? Where during COVID, because of inflation, the national debt effectively shrank by something like $6 trillion. Not in dollar terms, but in terms of the real value of the national debt and how it compares to the economy. And so the problem, not only is that kind of a sneaky thing to do, they're effectively stealing from everybody in America in order to pay the debt, but it also creates this perverse incentive where the government actually has an incentive to let inflation run hotter because they can effectively pay off the national debt by stripping out everybody's dollars in the country, essentially taking part of your dollars and putting that on the national debt.
Well, okay. So how do we, in your mind, if that's not an ideal scenario, because inflation is reducing the value of all of our earnings, all of our savings, it's a tax. If that's not an ideal way to get America's fiscal, both run an optimal economy and control our national debt and deficit and budget, what is the way? Like, how do we avoid this death spiral in a responsible way to the citizenry that is paying for all of this?
Yeah, well, Warren Buffett's got a fantastic idea where he says that if Congress can't balance the budget, then all of them have to resign with a lifetime ban from politics. Sounds like you know that one. That would work a charm. Absolutely endorse it 100%.
I love it.
But the core idea is that you need some kind of external constraint on people. So it could be a balanced budget amendment. It could be some kind of, budget deal, like budget ceiling with teeth. It could be just no longer increasing the budget ceiling, which, every single time that comes around, we beg Republicans to grow a spine and they don't. But at any rate, you need some kind of external mechanism, because the problem is that if you're having an election and one guy is promising to throw a party, trillions of dollars, you get a car, you get a car, and the other guy is saying, no, forget the party, we're just going to clean up the mess from last year. Who is going to win that election, right? And so you need both parties to come together, put some kind of guardrails in there that you're not benefiting one or the other side. You're saying, look, we're going to come together for the good of the country. We're going to limit how much money we can play with here. And then at that point, you let, say, 2% inflation gradually whittle away the national debt, which is what happened. You were talking about from World War II up until Richard Nixon. That's what we did do. So that's all it would take. And it's very easy to put into words. But of course, Washington's got to agree to limit itself, which it can't.
Well, so what you're talking about, I feel like what you're talking about from an external mechanism is the word incentive. So what Buffett has created there with that proposal is an incentive, self-preservation. You don't get to continue to serve if you don't participate and vote for a balanced budget amendment. Right now, there's just no incentive. We're always disappointed in Republicans because, honestly, there's no incentive for them or any politician right now to balance a budget, to not spend our money. In fact, we reward them for it. Basically, we can consistently reward them for going ahead and growing the size of government. So until we find an incentive, this is going to continue, whatever that incentive may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, our founding fathers knew that that was a problem, that elections run on 2-year, 4 or 6-year cycles. And so they're going to have very short-term horizons. And that's why we have a debt ceiling in the first place. But unfortunately, they just keep blowing right through that. So, right, you need the incentives of politicians to align with the good of the country. Unfortunately, at the moment, they don't.
All right. It is Peter St Onge. It's the Peter St Onge PhD podcast. Check him out, hopefully a little more often here on the Will Cain Show as well. All right. Love talking to you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
All right. There we go. All right. Young James will stay in the penalty box for today. I think we'll have a debate overnight how long he will be in the penalty box. That's going to be a meeting among the Politburo of the Will Cain Show. Results tomorrow. See you same time, same place here on the Will Cain Show.